Welcome everybody to another XAFer community stand-up. We meet once a month. Second Thursday of every month, we meet here to discuss about XAF, XPU, our personal projects, community contributions, and anything we want to share. We are really passionate about XAF, so I want to thank everybody for joining in again. With me are the Express MVP Manuel, Jose, and Yama-chan. So I'm humbled to be part of this team that I have been following for many years. So without further ado, I will let everybody introduce themselves because most probably most of you already know all of them. But for the ones of you who don't, please, Manuel, if you want to start.
Hi, I'm Manuel. I'm from Austria. I am a DevExpress MVP for almost
forever.
5-6 years, forever 5-6 years or something like this. And I'm working with DevExpress for almost 10 years. Yeah, I do a lot of open source, blogging about stuff, helping people out. So if anybody needs help with XAF in training, development, or stuff like this, call me out. There's my blog. We should link them down in the description later.
I can actually put it on here on the screen so everybody can see it. You see, I only have to type blog and it already shows directly.
Javier, if you want, I guess you should mute all the other persons because I'm hearing like small conversations in the back.
I will do that right now. Okay, Jose, you wanna continue?
Okay, my turn. Well, my name is, I will say my full Spanish name, Jose Manuel Ojeda. Most people know me for Jose, which is my childhood nickname. I'm from El Salvador, a small country in Central America, if you don't know where it is. Basically, I've been working with .NET since day one, and also with Developer Express components since day one. I come from a C++ background, but I don't do that anymore. So basically, in our company, what we do is like training for XAF, and we do the planning for the architecture for other companies. So if you need help on that, also you can show Javier the blog and the website.
Yeah, Jose is Jose Ojeda.
Yeah, that's my blog, which is basically like my notepad. When I don't want to forget something, I put it there so I can Google it later. Because you know how much time it takes to figure out one stuff that you think that you know, but you don't know actually. And can you put like the website for the company here, please?
Yeah.
And well, that's the website for our company. We are located in Tallinn, Estonia. But even though like the office are there, like most of the time, everyone is all around the world. So that's it for me. Dave, your turn.
Yeah, Dave Hesketh. I'm from Ontario, Canada. Yeah, I've been using XAF since it was released in 2008, using DevExpress control since about 2006, 2007. Before that, working on kind of medical imaging products, just with C# out of a little company in Toronto. So other than that, we do now a lot of, we did a lot of training. We've kind of backed off on training. We're doing more individual consulting. We do a lot of consulting with companies in the US. We had one client over in the UK. We actually did an on-site visit, which was really cool. That was about 4 or 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we help clients get their products up and running and train them along the way.
Great. So now I'm going to do a question for all the other persons here, at least the ones who are presenting. What are you drinking? So we're all drinking the same except Manuel.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're all drinking.
You didn't inform me, and I think it's hard to get the Canadian beer down to Austria, especially if I'm on vacation right now.
Okay, so we're drinking Canadian beer, a lager, as I think, is 5 degrees. And what are you drinking, Manuel? You're the only one who is different from.
Yeah, it's called Mura beer. It's my favorite beer from
It's Austrian.
Styria. It's an Austrian beer in Styria, upper Styria. So it's called Mura. The city is called Murau, and it's like they are brewing beer since 1495. So they really know how to brew beer, and it's a 5-2. So
5-2. Great. So we'll make a choice for our next meeting. Also, we will have a discussion after that. Okay, guys. Who want to start?
No, let me continue. So after the introduction from Manuel, Jose, and Dave from Yamachan, I want to say I have been following this guy for a long time, and Yamachan's modules are great. So you can take a look at their, actually, let me put it up here to their website and their code snippets, and I didn't spell it right. And their code snippets, they have really nice SAF modules, as well as their getting started video. That's a really nice video for anyone who is starting with SAF. Please go watch that video. It's really worth it. Jose has been doing also the ultra modules that are has a really nice functionality. Has been creating videos for a few years already. So if you are Spanish speaking, you will love that, because there are not that much information in Spanish, but he also has a lot of English videos. And Manuel, he goes from testing to packaging to the Windows 10 to do a lot of SAF best practices to Signal to. So if I can give you an advice,
the newest kind of on the block is Tasty. So
yeah.
we will discuss this probably later. So I'm working all around.
I was going about to say that. I was going about to say that, but I wanted you to break the ice. So I wanted you give the news. But if I can give any beginner today an advice, is follow these 3 XAFers, because you will really learn a lot about SAF in general. I know I have. So our stand-up that we do every month, the main goal is to grow as a community. And I have said before, if we are together as a community, we can be better, we can grow, we can help each other, we can collaborate, we can steer their express in something that we need. So, and we pretty much have presence in every online network. We have Facebook. Our Facebook group is already like 431 members. Gitter, if you want to discuss, you have here a way of doing. LinkedIn, we have the group here. You can follow us on Twitter. You can join our meetup group. You can subscribe to XAFers Weekly. So everywhere that you want to see us, you will find us. So please get involved. I want to encourage everybody to share more about their projects, about their experience, ask more, grind more. That always, the only thing that does is make us better. So with that out of the way, we can quickly review a few things here. Like we did a test in SAF Web on Linux, and it's running as a beauty. So that's really nice and really exciting news for the SAF community, because our server, our hosting cost, it will decrease a lot, because you don't have to pay for a Windows license. You don't have to, and you have a lot of nice benefits here. One new ticket from their Express is this object space where we are using link. I think that is a nice syntax for people that are not too comfortable with the criteria. And you just have to use first or default, put your generic and your lambda expression. Good to go. So from the Facebook group, we asked, actually, now that I thought about it, one of the things that I wanted to show is, I'm pretty sure you guys saw it, but one of the things that we love about SAF is what we can do with it, what we can improve on the community. And if you see here, I just want to point out someone that is doing a SAF application to help farmers in the western part of Honduras with their crops after the COVID-19 impact. This is the type of impact that we want to know more about, that we want to say, hey, SAF is great, but it's not because only we are passionate about it, we are biased. It's because we are doing real impact in real world, real applications. So just wanted to say congrats to Luis Andres. And from there on, I think that I will do a quick localization demo. That was one of the requests on the Facebook group, and then we move from there. So I don't quite remember the name of the XAFer who asked for that localization, but it's pretty much, let's create a new project. Let's do one class localized to Spanish. That's my language, and we go from there. Okay.
And the funny thing is that my Spanish and Javier's Spanish is not exactly the same. Sometimes the words that we use means the opposite.
It does. It does.
And actually, what is more funny is that the word for right now, for him, it means later.
Okay.
That's how it is in Cuba.
That's how it is.
Yeah. Okay. Let me put this for a second here. Okay, so we just create a brand new application and let's just add a new class. Nothing crazy. Let's customer, as always. And let's just add 2-3 properties, nothing else. I just want to show the concept. Name and others. And these are the code snippets from CodeRush. Yamachan has a lot of code snippets that they also develop, so you can also go to their website and download those. So pretty much that's it. I create 2 properties, nothing crazy, and let's look at how we can localize this, for example, to Spanish. So I'm going to put the model.
Did you compile? Because remember that you need to compile at least one time.
I did. I just did it here. And then let's choose. You see, my studio is acting weird. You see, it's showing me here, but it's not showing the icon, but it is what it is. Let's see. Come on. That's what happened in live presentations.
That's a demo god.
The live demo effect.
Demo god.
Okay, give me something so I can change to it.
Run it once, at least, and then it will show. But in general, you have some problems with your studio because you're missing icons.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a good sign.
But I will say, every time that I look a video of someone that I want to see how they did something and they struggle doing it, I'm happy. I'm saying that's exactly the same issue that I have all the time. So it's not a bad thing. It's just it's real life.
That's totally acceptable. Because if you do it exactly the way he did it and it doesn't work, you don't learn anything. But if you troubleshoot live, then
yes, exactly. If you are having issues, it's because you are actually doing it. Because the only way of you is the same phrase that who don't drive never getting an accident.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have it here, and let's open the model and let's see if now it wants. Okay.
That looks much better.
Yeah. So let's choose Spanish because that's the one I will understand and I can translate to. Okay. So now I have to restart Visual Studio so all the satellite assemblies get loaded again. So I will just close it out, save. And open back again. And for everyone who is in the chat listening, we're going to do a live question and answer later. So if you have any question, please feel free to be put it on the chat. We're going to get to it in a little bit. And you have here Dave, Jose, and Manuel. So don't hold back. Ask anything. Ask about Yamachan free models. Ask about testing. Ask about anything. CI/CD, anything you want. So let's open the model quickly. And let's select Spanish. Bien. I don't know why it didn't. Okay, Spanish. Come on.
Because if you don't save, if you don't save
Got
it, it will not take it next time. So do it again because it will load the satellite assemblies.
Okay, let's do it again.
If anybody from the XAF team is watching this, this is definitely something UX could improve a much.
Yeah,
If you
and
don't
actually, last time Dennis was watching. Last time I saw Dennis, I wasn't sure it was him because we have a few Dennis on our Facebook group, but then he was watching. So I'm really excited about that because that means that the DevExpress team is also watching this. And again, it's like as a community being able to ask them, hey, this is not working, this is working, this is good, this is great, this, can you improve this?
So now there is model underline ES.
Yeah, exactly. There is this new mode, and then when we change something, we're gonna go to there and see if that is actually. So if we select Spanish, right? And let's do anything so we can see. Let's go to my, and let's change something here just to show that it's changing here. So address in Spanish is direction, right? If I go here now and let's say, you see that it just had the new node on the difference, so we know that it's localizing that one. So one thing that we can do here, and you see that I have issue with my icons, but there is a localization icon here
That
we
should
can
be like a planet Earth, like a world, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right here we have everything that we can translate, and you can see everything here. So if we pretty much look for that captions here from the, let's say in the notepad, we can just type customer, and it will give me all the, let's just select this one. So right here you see that I have directions, and I can put name is nombre, and customer in Spanish is cliente, right? So we save this, and we can do that, and we can actually quickly, let me show that. We can export this as a CBS, as a Excel, do it in Excel and re-import back, and that will be good to go. That's faster either way. So now, after doing that, if we go to the language here and we select Spanish, we compile, and we run it.
Now
And
it's
of
not
course,
the application, is la aplicación.
Exactly.
the thing is, per default, it's picked from the operating system localization.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it gets the localization of the thread. So if you change the thread, it will change actually.
If you see, we didn't spend not even like 10 minutes, 5 minutes talking about this, and me doing this, restarting Visual Studio a few times, and we already have all of our application in Spanish. So it's instead of file, archivo, inicio, ver, herramientas, instead of refresh, actualizar, cliente. So I believe it's really neat. I believe it gives you a lot of power to get your application in the hands of a lot of users that doesn't speak your language. And that's pretty much it. One thing that I could add to that is like sometimes we have a string in our code, and we can use the caption helper. So we create a node on the model, and then we can translate it over there, and good to go. So if anyone has any question about localization, please put it on the chat, and we can move forward.
I just want to add something, Javier. I guess you should put the new people like in mute because I'm listening to them. There are like 3 new persons that you should put on mute. And okay, just about localization is like you can also translate it with a web service, because it will if you click the translate button in that grid that you saw there, it will go to a Bing web service. But the Bing web service will reject the translation if there are more like, I don't know, like 2,000 characters, something like that. So in the end, it looks like it's broken, but it's not. It's just that you're sending too much text. And also that doesn't depend on Developer Express. It does depends on Bing. So
so a few things about this.
We do have
because
something that will do it with Google Translator, but it still is the same. You will always have some limit. So the thing is that the message that you will get in the localization tool is not human readable. It will say like 404 rejected by the server. Doesn't mean anything. But actually the problem is that you're sending too much text to be translated. So also that's something that you can improve. I mean, we need to tell Developer Express people about that the message is not correct. I mean, we get a lot of questions because of that, because we have customers in Europe, and in Europe, in every 5 kilometers, they speak some different language. So everyone tell me like, it's broken, it doesn't work. And it's not, it's like, this too much text actually. So just to put that, like, you cannot use at the moment the translation tool.
I want to answer a few things that the community is asking on the chat. The first one is Brian. He's asking if you can add like a button or a drop down where you can change the language dynamically. And if you see here the feature center demo, you can change the language of the application of everything. So you can definitely do that. We're not gonna cover it here, but you can reach out to us later on if you have any doubt on how to implement, and you can look for it in the support tickets. There are a lot of tickets about localization, and definitely you can actually change the language dynamically.
Or just look at the code of the feature center. It's
exactly.
always a great thing how they do stuff and structure out stuff in the feature center. It's not all it's not perfect valid production code, but it's almost every time a good hint how to get started if you don't have an idea or don't find a ticket.
And also one resource that I guess you should check is that there is a place, we need to find that address, Javier, where they show like a percentage of how much is being translated already for the controls. Like
I actually have another question from Gustavo. He's saying that in Spanish, the percentage of translation out of the box is 81.4. But we also have to be aware that a lot of the translation in the Dev Express are done for the community. Someone actually did the translation and shared it with them, and they use it. So there might be some cases that is not 100%, for example, in your language, how you want it. But you have the possibility to export that file, changes, and put exactly a locale word or anything you need to. So it's actually translated as you need to.
Because as Gustavo said, like there is a percentage for each language, and the biggest percentage will be for English. Of course, it's 100% because it's like the zero language. Then you will have Spanish, Russian, and Japanese, and all of them. I think like also German. It's like 90%. So those are like the biggest ones. But if you speak Estonian, for example, I used to live in Tallinn in Estonia, it's like 0%. Someone needs to do the translations. If you live in Finland also, it's the same. So I mean, the smaller the population is for the language, the less likely is to be like 100% translated. So you will have to do more translation for yourself.
So, and one of our more engaged XAFers that he's always on community stand-up, Jacek, he's asking, and I showed it before, but I want to just just validate this. Jacek, you can definitely export the file for translation, give it to someone else. They fill out.
Why don't you do it? I mean, it's like 1 second. You have the studio there already.
Okay, I think that I showed it, but we can definitely do it.
I think we were watching that before. No, do it from the studio, not from the runtime. Yeah.
Let me move this for a second. Okay, so this one, some reason I don't have the icon, so let's export all records, and let's put it on my desktop and go quickly there. So right here, Jacek, you will be able to send this to anyone and say, hey, this is the English wording. I need you to fill out all the Spanish wording. then you can import that and you're good to go. Okay, perfect. So if there is no other questions, let's move forward. The second question that we had when I asked for suggestion for this community stand-up was Keith from Canada. Actually, he's here in the chat with us, and he was having some question about controllers in general, Windows controller, when to use the Windows controller, when to use the view controller, and so on. So, Dave, do you want to take this one?
Can I mute myself? You want me to take this one?
Yeah, do you want to take this one? Keith, he was having some questions about controllers in general, and pretty much he's just giving an overview of what a controller is, Windows controller versus view controllers, and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me see if I can bring up my screen here real quick. So basically, view controllers, Windows controllers, both inherit from the same controller base, and they're just used in different contexts, depending on how you want them to behave. So let me bring up my Visual Studio with all my projects up here, and I'll share my screen.
All right, let me stop sharing then myself so you can actually share your screen quickly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get going.
Again, thanks everybody for showing up. It's great to see so many XAFers connected to our community stand-up.
Can you make me give me rights to present?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, you should be able to do it now.
2 users. Try the other one. I'm on my phone now for the video.
Got it. Let me see.
I don't have a camera on that one.
Okay, I think that because I make you a host, I think that the other user have to give you permission now.
Oh, you made me the host.
Yeah, I mean, there is actually one stuff, Javier, that is like a permission that you, without changing the host, you can tell like everyone is allowed to share a screen.
Yeah, I didn't want to waste too much time on finding that, so I just making a host completely and that's it.
There we go. I got the host now.
All the security everywhere.
There we go. We should be able to see my screen now.
There we go. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
Okay, this is going to be solution 8 because why not? And I'm going to do Windows. I always start with a Windows project just because I like Windows projects. I'll leave all that blank. Okay, that. Oh, what the? Hang on.
You choose VB.
I didn't mean to do that. I wish you could choose not to install.
Who would choose that anyway?
I mean, you can watch me struggle through VB if you really want. 20.1
No, you're choosing
No,
Visual
that's
Basic.
Visual Basic. That's Visual Basic.
There we go. Filters. Good work there, Microsoft team. Love this. C#. There we go.
Just use it.
9.
I always like name it like delete me solution something, delete me solution something, so I know that I have to delete them later.
I mean, I reformat my machine at least once a year, usually twice a year. So they don't.
No, I do it like every month. So
You lose all your VB projects when you do this.
no, the thing is that virtualization. What you need is truly virtualization. So even if I restart, when I start again, I have the same mess on my projects folder.
All right, so if you're not familiar with the snippets that we use, if you use CodeRush, great. We at LlamaChat have code snippets that we use to make things a little bit quicker, which are usually prop XAF to give us our list of quickly creatable properties. So I'm gonna do a string for name, We'll do a string email address and a date, time, start, or join date. Great. Let me get back out of this. Do a whoops, contact. First name, do last name. And then if I want to do my association, I'm doing a prop XAF1 in this case. This is going to be a client. And then on the client side, I'm doing a prop XAF collection aggregated. I'm going to do aggregated because the client basically owns the contacts. It's not coming from a shared pool. And that's it. Let me get connection string going here. Let it run. So controllers let you interact with views, the business objects, with other controllers, with templates, right? Everything that you want to be doing with the application, you're generally doing from a controller. So the question is, are you doing it from a Windows controller or are you doing it from a view controller? And then if you're using a view controller, are you using the kind of base view controller, or are you doing a object view controller where you can scope it down a little bit further? So here's my basic application. I'm going to put Acme Company, info at Acme, pick a date, great, add a contact. There we go. And we'll go ahead and just create a controller straight out of the box. Nothing exciting about it first. So when you're deciding where to put your controller, that's where you get some consideration going in terms of scope. Are you going to have this interacting with an individual control or a template that is platform specific? So am I dealing with a Windows control or a web control? Or is it just a controller that I need to apply across all platforms? So that's the case here. In that case, I'm going to put it in the .module. If I'm doing platform specific, of course, it has to be in that platform specific module. And then there's two approaches to creating controllers, either through the add dev express item or just a straight class. If you use the add dev express item with a view controller, you get the designer component, which is really nice. So let's do sample view controller. So I have the designer, and then the background I have the controller code. If you're doing it just in code, it's great. You don't have to use you don't have to worry about the designer piece of it, but you have to code in the actions and stuff manually. So let's just
I did a whole blog post about that. You can read it on it.
Oh, did you? Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, my toolbox is initializing.
Oh.
There we go. Yeah, it's not one of the bad ones today. Let me drop just a simple action on here. And we'll just call this test action. There we go. So because I haven't defined any kind of scope to this controller, it's going to be available everywhere. You can see I have a test action up here, which is a contacts list view, which is actually the client underscore contacts underscore list view. Didn't do anything. And then it's also on the client detail view, so it's up here. If I go back to the client list view, it's also here. So there's no scope to this at all. It's just everywhere. And that's for every single view. That's why it's called a view controller. If I was doing a window controller, we can go back and change that real quick. So let's go back in code, and the only thing that defines it is this piece right here. So we're going to window controller. Again, has no scope on it. Oh, hang on, can't do the view controls created. There's no controls created in the Windows controller. So you're going to see I have two actions here now within this window, and that's because this is a window and this is also an embedded window. I'm using the tabbed MDI. You'll notice that my sub view here, my nested list view, doesn't have that controller because it doesn't have its own window. It's just a view. So that's the difference between a view controller and a window controller, is really to what level it's scoped to. You'll even notice that things like the pop-ups, that's a date pop-up. Let me pick contact. This may not work on a pop-up view, but yeah, you wouldn't see it here. Yeah, so there's main windows and there's nested windows you can choose to scope this down to. And scope is really important when you're creating controllers. I see it all the time where they'll add an action and then they'll scope the action rather than scope the whole controller. And basically when you scope a controller down, let me change this back to a view controller because it's easier to scope. You're basically saying, what context am I using this in? So am I using it on a particular view or a view type or an object type? So if we look at the properties over here on the view controller itself, you can see the target view ID. I can specify a particular ID or a view nesting, whether it be root or nested. And then the target view type, will it be a detail view, list view, or dashboard view. And also the target object type. I shouldn't have clicked that, it takes forever to come up. That wasn't too bad today. A nice change that came about probably, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, was the ability to specify multiple target detail views, just separated by I think it's a comma or something.
Does that? I didn't knew that. So that's new for me.
You can do that.
I think it's semicolon.
Okay, I was answering a question on the chat. Can you say that again? What we didn't know?
I mean, you can like specify like more than one view ID.
Yeah. And you can actually say any, but and a semicolon and this other one. So it will be for everything except that one. So there are a lot of permutation there. That's a really nice.
That is new for me. That is new for me.
Learn something new. Yeah, really cool they've done that. But the scope is really important because it really defines where this thing's going to show up. And some people will keep the controller not scoped down at all, and they'll just scope down the action. The issue with that is that the controller then gets created for every view, even though you're only using the action. The only purpose of this controller is to have that action. It's being used everywhere and it doesn't need to be. So I usually recommend that people scope that down at the controller level instead. And you can use the designer to do that. Personally, what we've done over time, we've started putting the targets up here. So do like target view type. Okay, so that equals view type dot list view. And then if I want to put a target object type, I'll just put target object type equals type of we'll do contact. And so before you could do the target view types with multiple views specified, you either had to create separate controllers, you had to create one generic controller that you then scope down based on whether or not the view is a particular type, or you had to apply an interface to those types and then create your interface or create your controller scope down to that interface.
One question, Dave, is like, what is your approach? Because in here, what we do is that we create a controller per view. For example, if you're going to make a controller for a customer detail view, we call it customer detail view controller. And then if it's going to be for a list view, customer list view controller, and we have like really specific scopes. So we end up with a lot of controllers in general. So that's how you do it, or you use another pattern?
I try to make things as generic as possible. So if it's something very specific, then yeah, okay, you're going to be doing one controller per view, and depending on what it is, that makes sense. If it's something that you create a controller for one view, but then during a customer or a client implementation, you change that view or you do a view variant, then your controller no longer works, right? So those kind of runtime customizations I try to account for as well. So I always try to make my controllers as generic as I possibly can. And then if there's an action on a view that just shouldn't be there, so if I have a a custom contact view, I can just pull that action out from that view at that point.
Well, actually, what we do in here is that we try to do, like, in general, try to follow the solid design pattern. So one of the principles is the interfaces. So in the end, we do the controllers by interface, because it's not about the type, it's about if it's implement this interface, it needs this. So in that sense, it's like even more like narrowed down to like one specific functionality. If this type implements this interface, then the controller should run and show whatever it needs to show.
And the domain components were really cool for that too, because they were completely interface driven. And it actually allowed for things like
we have a talk with Dennis about domain components like last week.
Did you?
Yes, and because I wanted to create my open source version of it, I say like, please don't.
What he
like,
said was, please stop it.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
No, the thing is that, okay, maybe for SAF context, it might not work, but we do a lot of XPO type of project, just XPO base. So in that sense, we might have to, I mean, we want to create something like that. We have some ideas, but I guess I will show that later. So.
Awesome. We'll wrap this up real quick, guys. I know we want to talk about other things for sure. So let me just talk about scope a little bit more, and then just talk about the other type of view controllers we can create. So you'll see my actions disappeared even though we're on a list view. When I get into a client detail view, it's not up here anymore, but it's been scoped down to list views that are contact only. So I see it here, and I should see it over here. So that is a regular view controller. There are two extensions you can do on top of that. So you can do a public part one class sample view controller 2, where you're doing an object view controller. And this lets you specify a view type and an object type. So if I wanted to do a list view based on contact, I can do that right here. And now I can just work with my controller. It's already pre-scoped for me. I can also do a public.
There's one thing to consider or beware of that. If you want to use the designer to specify the actions, if you use the generic one, the object view controller of list view and contact, you don't have the possibility anymore to specify actions in the designer, and it's not a limitation of DevExpress or XAF. It's just a Visual Studio thing. So Visual Studio designer files don't work with generics.
Yeah.
So that gets asked a lot.
So these are really useful. You're absolutely right. These are really useful if you're doing non-action controllers. So if you're trying to apply logic to other controllers, where you're doing something that doesn't require an action, then these are really useful. But that's absolutely bang on. Yeah, you have to be aware that if you want to create actions, you can, but you have to code them yourself.
So real quick, sorry to interrupt, Dave. So Herman is asking on the chat, how do you hide simple actions? Going to the model and using the hiding actions under the views or everything. So that's an approach, but you can also do it in code. You can actually in a controller say and set up the active or the enable. So active if you want to hide it completely, or enable if you want to like gray it out so they cannot disable it, so they cannot use it, and just put a reason like, I don't like this action to be active in this view, false, and that's it. I don't know if that makes sense.
So that's something I've picked up over the years. Is I actually put the like this.name or just name, which will give the current controller name for why it's active or disabled. That way, when I go run the diagnostics to figure out why an action isn't enabled, it tells me the controller it's in versus whatever bogus text I decide to put in randomly.
Nice.
So I find that's a little bit easier in terms of debugging.
If your app is getting really large with large complicated actions, I would or with multiple modules that can interact with each other, then I would use get type of the controller with full name. So you because the control name is just the class name and doesn't inherit the namespace. So that's another tip.
Nice.
Yeah,
If-
actually we do that, Manuel, that we use the full class name because it will include the assembly and so on. So it's
Yes,
like
yeah.
unique. It's like the full name of
Yeah.
a person.
Yeah.
So it is even better because you can locate it between assemblies. Because
Yeah.
what's the main problem? That if you have more than one.
That's the error you get if you're using generic controllers. That what
Welcome
we're
back to the
talking
beginning.
about.
Sorry.
Wonderful.
That's you.
Let's put that back there now. That builds. The other approach you can take is the target object criteria to enable and disable actions. So because I'm currently basing this on contact, I can do where something like first name equals John. It has to be either true for at least one or true for all. You can pick a selection dependency type that requires at least one thing to be selected, or one or more. Let's take one or more. So when I run this now, oops, get over there, like that. So you'll see my actions currently enabled because my first name is John. If I put brother William in, that action becomes disabled automatically, which is kind of cool. And that's just built in from one of the DevExpress controllers. It just looks at that criteria, it evaluates against the selection, and then enables or disables based on those selected items. Is there anything I missed, guys? Is that pretty good?
I think that you
that's
covered
nice.
like everything.
That's nice. And the question that I was having on the chat is, if you use, instead of enable, active, it won't be gray out like it's doing right now. It will be completely hidden. You won't even see it.
Exactly. Yeah, so if we do simple action active, you're all together. And what I really like about the actions is that they're really receptive to changes on the fly. So if I even keep this, let me keep this active, but let me put some code into the execute, I can just remove it once it's been clicked.
One thing that I learned from Dave is when you were naming the actions, if you like in the ID or the name, you put action before, then when you go to the model, you have all your actions that you did on the top and all the actions from DevExpress like following through. So that's really nice tip. It's a small one, but it makes a whole of a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, so here you can see, again, disabled because of that rule. But as soon as I'm on John, if I click test action, it just goes away. It's
Nice.
There's one thing I want to mention. Dave, can you go into the app config file and enable the diagnostics action? And that's the thing you should have always on in development mode. Because sometimes it's hard to figure out why an action isn't active or isn't enabled or something like this.
Have you noticed that in the web version, there is almost no space to read this? You have to copy this and put it in a notepad or something because the space to read it is almost...
I think you can Ctrl F into that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of data here. I rarely use these myself, but
it's cool to troubleshoot. You can Ctrl F with it. So
that's handy.
There it is.
There you go.
Now it's active false, and now you can see the controller is active false. No, you missed it. But
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, there it is. And now there's the name. Now it is enabled and it's active, true. And if you click it and search again for it, then there should be a reason into the item key one. No, you have to execute the action because right now it's enabled and isn't disabled. Yeah, that was the thing I was. Yeah. And that is the reason why we say put in the name of the controller.
Mm-hmm. Next one, right?
Caption delete. Yeah, that's because you called it simple action with a small.
Yeah.
But never mind. Info is there.
Found it is action one. Do I have to do the child window or the basic diagnostics up here?
No, it should be the child window.
Right.
Depending on where the control is defined.
Yeah, fair
See,
enough.
even if we're MVPs, sometimes the stuff don't work.
Absolutely.
This is our life.
Especially live.
Especially live.
And it calls because it's not scripted. It's but never mind.
I want to let everyone know that we have no preparation whatsoever, no agenda. So we just met 10 minutes before we start the community stand-up, and we just start sharing what we know. So sometimes it's going to happen. So
we created a little helper module. It's available somewhere on the DevExpress Help Center, where if you're having an issue where something's not behaving properly, you can add this module in and you can actually turn off controllers, either all controllers, all non-DevExpress controllers. You can check them on and off individually until you find that controller that's being problematic. And we've found that helpful over the years.
Hey,
it was really
I have used it several times. We had a problem with an application with a lot of performance issues, and I just was like, where is this a lot of queries coming from? I have no idea where is this. I deactivated all the controllers with your tool that I think that is really nice. I found it actually on the DevExpress Center. And I actually pinpoint the controller that it was giving me the error, fix the error, and good to go. And that was a big help. That saved me a lot of time.
Yeah, I think we should include that in the next meetup, or maybe in a video with Yamachant that we use it. Remember, Javier, and I think it's really neat because for identify controllers that are creating performance issues, it's amazing. You can just turn it off and you will know where it is. So it's nice.
That's something I do wish DevExpress would include in the base is the option to turn on that benchmarking so that you can see how long it takes for each controller to become activated or deactivated.
I agree. That will be nice.
But I think that's a whole another topic, and this
Absolutely.
is.
Yeah, we can go. We're like a specialist on going off topic for like 40 minutes.
Are any more questions about view controllers and window controllers?
Okay, no, actually, Keith, that he was the one who was requesting this topic. He already wrote on the chat, and he said, "Thanks, Dave. That's great." So that means that we actually, in my opinion, this was a really great explanation, and with a great visual. Because sometimes we are just talking, and maybe they are not seeing it. Dave actually showed it on code and showed how is everything working. So perfect. So Dave, if you just stop sharing, I will come back to my screen and let's move forward. Okay, Jose, I think that is your turn.
My turn. Good.
One of other requests that we have from the Facebook group. So if you are watching this later on YouTube and you are not still a member of the group, please join up. We love to have more people asking questions, and we can discuss about any topic. And one of the things that I want to point out is like we are taking every request that we got on the Facebook group. So that's a signal that if you have another question for next time, please put it. We're going to definitely do our best to address it here. So one of the questions was, how do we share our ORM as a REST service? And one of the solutions, there are a few. You can do OData, you can do WCF, even if now for NetCore and Net5 is not going to move forward. But one of the solutions is XPO Web API. So Jose will talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so I guess you should make me the host so I can start sharing.
Done.
Okay, so let's see, share, and I'm going to share this screen. So, okay, I'm on Linux right now, so let's go to the virtual machine, which is Windows, and let's hide all of this. And I will hide you guys, so I will don't know where you are, and I will put this in the corner. So, okay, basically, well, like 2 months ago or 3 months ago, I guess we were having vacation time with Javier, and well, I guess most of you know that he and I, we work together in the same company in Bit Frameworks. So we were talking like, what do we do with all this stuff that we have, all this code? It used to be like a proprietary product, and we decided to open source as much as we can of our code base, because sometimes just maintain some piece of code for just 1 or 2 customers is like really time consuming. So it's better to be open source so anyone can participate. So, well, basically we create a repository on GitHub. Let's see if we have it here. I do have a lot of repositories, more than I should have, I guess, but in the end, what is the most important one is this one. Everything that will be open source will be part of this. So just to show you, we have a few XPO providers. Maybe in our office, we have around 8 that don't come with DevExpress. So those are extended functionality for either a special database. Like for example, we have a customer in Dominican Republic, which they use IBM DB2, but not the normal one. They use for AS400. So we have a special version for AS400. We have for SAP HANA also that is not covered by Developer Express. And in the end, since we were creating XPO providers, we decided to create a web API provider. Why? Because we do a lot of Xamarin here in the office. So we do integrations with SAF applications, then we expose a little part of the application through Xamarin Forms. So we used to have web services, and we used to have like OData web services, and it's good for reading, and it's like nice, and it's easy. But then when you try to update or insert complex objects, it's like really difficult, and it will break depending on the version of OData that you're using, and so on, so on, so on. So basically, what's a nightmare? So what we decided is like, okay, if it's C# on the mobile side and C# on the server side, why don't we just do like a transport layer in between? So I'm going to do a demo, but first I wanted to show, here we have the repository. This is public. You can just go in and clone it. And I actually encourage you to do that. And basically that's what I have in here open. And let's go to the providers. I created a presentation. Hey, it's not here. What happened? Hold on.
Manuel, we had some help from you with the CI/CD on that project.
Yeah, actually, we're using the layout that you talked with Javier in one of your meetings. So let's see. Well, I think
the directory build props file. Yeah, there.
Exactly. No, and the structure, the source folder and everything behind. So that's really nice.
Okay, so I will use the online copy of this. It's not here. See the demo. The demo
what?
Yes. So hold on, just one sec. Let's go here. Let's go here again. Where is my virtual here?
You have too many virtual machines, Jose.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I don't know, like, where is the window inside of what?
Inside of what window?
Yes. So, and inside of which computer, because I have 2 computers working together for virtualization. So one sec, just that PowerPoint should be here. I was preparing it before. Okay, so hold on one sec. Let's go to PowerPoint again. If not, I will do it with the live. No.
It should be on your desktop according to the.
No, but I deleted it because I didn't want to have like several versions of it. So I thought, okay.
That's Git for.
Yeah, okay. So let's skip this. I will just like maybe it's here. Yes. Thanks God of PowerPoint. Okay, so basically this is the layout. And what we have is like we have a web server, which it doesn't create an API. It does create a ASP.NET Core API. I mean, you have the verbs like get, post, and so on, but we're using just one verb, the post verb, because you can send more data to that type of functions. So it's like quite simple. We have an implementation in here, and we can have like more than one database exposed by this service. So in the end, you put like as many connections as thing as you want, and you just have to put an ID, like for example, in here DB1, DB2, DB3, DB5, and this should be DB4, and then you expose it through the API. So it goes through HTTP or HTTPS, like with SSL, and then you can have any client. In general, this is somehow our layout. We have iPhones, Android phones, console projects, Windows projects. In this, you can include stuff, of course, in the Windows projects or web projects. And also, you can run it on Linux or Mac OS. So basically, what it does is that in the client side, you're using XPO, but instead of connecting directly to the database, you are going to connect to our provider, which is the web API provider. So basically, what we do is we transport the operations, the select operations, the modify operations through HTTP to the server side. So basically, the client doesn't have to have any reference to the database, or it doesn't know which database it is actually. So why we did it HTTP? Well, I used to love like WCF. I think it's like really neat technology. I used to work a lot on it, and when they launched it, like when they released it, from my company that I was working at that time, they sent me to New York to take a course about WCF to see how we will use it. And it was really difficult. And WCF is, it's not complicated, but it's really broad. You have like a lot of network protocols that you can handle. So in the end, we decided to go to HTTP because sometimes if you do a mobile application, persons will go to a Starbucks cafe, for example, and maybe the router of the Starbucks cafe will only allow HTTP or HTTPS communication. If you're using WCF and you're using TCP/IP, for example, it might not go through because the router might not allow it. So the safest way is to do HTTP communication, but actually we will expand this provider to include WebSockets, for example, and maybe any other transport layer that we want to include. But so far, HTTP is what is good for us at the moment. So
Jose, as one question on this to get some so you talked about web API and WCF and all that kind of stuff. The thing is, it's if I go for web API, for example, then I have like a public HTTP, or it doesn't need to be public, but you have some kind of REST endpoint or something like this, where you say, okay, get customers, and you get a JSON blob back there, and you have all that get post put operations. And with WCF, for example, you have this communication foundation where, okay, let's talk XML, and now let's use net TCP and do all the communication stuff. For XPO web API, you need both sides at least need to talk XPO, or?
Basically, in general, what we're transporting is like the internal communication of XPO. So,
Jose, sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. You are the host, and we have, I think, that a few people on the waiting room.
Oh, I need to allow them. Hold on. Just let me.
Because I cannot do it. I'm not the host right now.
Let's see participants. Yeah.
Please.
Okay, so I guess it's good. 2 more persons should be
Okay.
joined.
Perfect.
And, okay.
So
So-
you share the same model in the client application.
Well, in this case, Manuel, actually we don't even use the models in here. In here, we instantiate the data store without knowing which model is going to be connected to.
Okay.
So I will show actually the code, and you can see it because the repository is public, so you can just go and grab it. So hold on, I need to put the new people in mute, I guess. Mute. Okay. So basically that's the layout, and let's run it actually so I can show it to you. So let me first close all these windows and let me make my machine full screen. Or maybe not, because I don't know. I mean, it's hidden by the Zoom menu. Okay, so I will put this like in the corner maybe. Okay, so basically here we have the API provider, and we have the client and the server side. So in here we have a demo. So let's check the demo. So we have an ORM, which I will use between all the stuff that we will open source. So I will use that ORM to all the demonstrations. So it's here in the share folder. So here is the web API demo. So let's check the server first. The server is like really neat. For this server, I just did like right click, add new project, and I selected .NET Core Web API type of project. I don't want to show that because it will take time, and I prefer to show more code in this case. So if you go to the startup class, we only add a few lines in here. So basically, we use a dependency injection features of ASP.NET Core, and we do is like we create a data store resolver. What is this? It's like with this service, you can expose more than one database. Depending on your ID, it will try to go to the configuration file and load the information, the connection string, if it's not there. So basically, this is the one, this component is the one who handles like, hey, I get a request to connect to this database, the database DB1 or DB2 or DB3. So let's try to figure it out from the connection string. And after that, you add some helpers for serializations and the communications in between. So basically these 3 lines, which I will make an extension out of this. So you can do something like just add XPO Web API to the service. So after you have that, you only have to do like, you add a new controller. In this case, let's go to the controllers, and we have this controller. So this should inherit from XPO Web API controller base. And then in here is empty. I just inherited from it. You can like have it completely clean, but I did create the override so you can show like, oh, here is like the do command. Here is the get auto create options. Here is the modify data. So you can do something here in between if you want to alter that flow. But in general, if you don't even have to create the overrides. So, okay, that's what we have. And let me show you the settings. So in here in the settings, we have 2 sections. We have the connection string. In here, you can.
Also, can you mute? There is.
Yes. Hold on. Let me see who is still mute. Okay, I think everyone is mute. Yes. So basically, it's like in here you can put as many connection strings as you want, and also you can add them in runtime. Maybe your service is already running, and you need to add a new database. So you just go and add one, and you have to put a unique ID in here as a name. And also you have to do the same for the auto create options, because each database might have a different auto create option setting. So you can do database in the schema. This is basically the name as in the enum object. So after that, here we have like both of them are attached to a memory provider. to make the example more simple. So that's pretty much it. So in general, to just go back and say what you need to do is like you create a ASP.NET Core Web API project, a clean one. Then you just add the reference, add these 3 lines. Well, 6 lines. And then you create a controller that you should inherit from XPO Web API controller base. And everything else, you don't need to overwrite it. I just put it here to show that that's what it does. And then that's it. And let's go to the client side. In the client side, of course, you will add reference to the client project. You will see in here the Web API client. And let's go to the program. So here it's really easy. To use this controller, you only have to use 1 line, register. So this will register the XPO provider. So you can use a different XPO provider that is not, doesn't come out of the box with all the developer express component. Then all of the providers, including SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, they do have a static method called getConnectionString, where you can send some parameters about your connection, and it will return the valid XPO connection string, because XPO connection string are a little bit different, especially because they have the part of the provider. So in here, I do get XPO connection string. It asks me for the URL. Then for the endpoint, I mean for the controller, basically. So the controller is, this is the name of the controller that we are going to access. Then if you do need a token to secure your communication, if you want to create a JWT token, also we provide the functionality that you can log in, get a token, and then make your connection string. I'm not going to show that because it's a more complex scenario. And then the ID. So this is going to connect to DB1. And if you go to the server, DB1 is a memory data store and will be saved on the file DB1 XML. So then after you get the connection string, basically you can do XPO default, get connection provider, you pass the connection string and the auto create options. And basically this will get you a data store where you can init your data layer. So I'm using here the XPO helper. So let's go and see what it does. No. Well, I have this is on the ORM, I think. So basically, you will see this in all the examples of DevExpress, especially in the web examples, that they have a class to initialize the data layer and to create the dictionary and so on. So this is basically boilerplate code. And we will include this class actually in one of our nuggets, so you don't have to write it all the time. But in here in the example, you can see how it is and why it's working. So basically, this is like a utility to initialize the database if it doesn't exist, like the updater, and to return unit of words attached to that data layer. So let's go back to the program. So in here, I have, I initialize the data layer, and then I create a new unit of work. In the unit of work, I will use Bogus. Javier did a video about this, which is something like really nice, really neat, is to fake data, is to create like records with valid data. So you can tell Bogus create a full name, create a Boolean property, create a phone number. So basically I'm going to create like, I don't know how many, like 100 customers, and then I will commit the transaction. So basically the flow is like, I'm going to connect to the web API, then I'm going to update my schema, get a session, and with that session, I'm going to create 100 customers with the Bogus Faker API, and then I'm going to commit them to the server. So this is happening on the client side. The client side doesn't have any reference to any database, or it will not connect to the database. It will connect to the API, actually. So basically, that's it. So let's run it. So let's come here. Properties. Then we're going to do multiple startup projects, and we're going to run the console and the server. So also what I wanted to show you is here. Since we're going to connect to XML file called dv1 and it doesn't exist and it will be updated by the server, that file will show in here when it runs. So I'm going to put a breakpoint here and just run this. So this will open up the server. It's a common web API server, and actually you will see the controller that is one of the built-in controllers. And then we will just start the console application and we'll start communicating with the server through HTTP. Okay, so this is the forecast controller that comes as a demo with the server. It's not all server, it's the web API server. So in here, we did the get connection string. Let me close this, I don't need the diagnostics. So this is the connection string that you will get. So the XPO provider is XPO web API, then you pass the URL. I'm not using token, I'm using a controller. The controller is XPO web API. Token is empty, and I'm going to connect to the data store with the ID dv1. So after that, it will initialize the data layer and everything that you need to do in XPO. And then we will create a new unit of work attached to that data layer. And we will create 100 customers with the bogus faker API. And we will commit them. And you will see that as soon as I commit them, this file will be created here in the server side. So let's run it. And it's done. So now this application, which didn't have any idea or knowledge of where it's going to be connected, I mean, you just have the URL. It connects to the database, in this case, an in-memory database, and it creates the data. And I can show you that because if you go to the server part, now you have this file, the dv1 file. So I'm going to stop so I can open this. So the 100 customer that I create in the console application end up in this XML is here. So I will format it. So Control A, Control K, Control F. So in here you see the 100 customers that I just created in the code in the console application are stored in this XML file. And of course you can use SQL Server, MySQL, any database that you can connect. I just did it with the in-memory provider because it's easy to show for everyone. You don't have to have, maybe you don't have SQL Server, you only use Postgres, so you don't have the database. So in here you have the schema, and then you have the actual data here. So here are the 100 customers that I connected. And what I can show you is that in the client, I don't have any reference to system data, SQL client, or anything. So in this case, actually, we use this with UNO in WebAssembly, that you cannot port the iDatabase connection from ADO to that because it will be swallowed by the linker. So in this case, it's really neat because you can use the same component to use UNO and WebAssembly, because one of the main goals that we have here in the office is to work with WebAssembly as soon as we can. So we have the connector. It works at any XPO connector. If you see the lines, it's really easy to implement.
Actually, today DevExpress put a blog post about controls that they have for WinUI 3. So that's going to be reusable for UNO, for DWP, and for a lot of things. So that's really nice.
Yeah, that's really nice. So we're that's our aim, because we don't do like HTML or any type of web project in here. We like WebAssembly because it's SAML is what we know so far. So as you can see, like transport your code from XPO from one place to the other, like in the connection to the database is really easy. It's basically just this line, and then you have to have the right connection string. So you can do it with 2 lines without changing anything on your application, and we'll be connecting to a remote database. and it will be talking through HTTP connection. So basically, that's everything for the demo. We'll create more demos in here. Actually, I just put the console one because it's the easiest one to understand. You can see the flow that is like a few lines. But we will have a demo with UNO platform because we are like doing a big research for that. And also we will have, of course, summary forms because everyone use that. And actually we use it a lot in our project. So the main goal when we created this component was to use XPO and summary forms. We started with WCF, but we work with the developer express team, and there are so many stuff that are broken on the WCF client for Xamarin that we decide like, hey, this is just network communication. Let's do it through other layer. Let's don't use WCF. It's faster to create our own in this case. And we did, and we have been using this for already like 2 years or something. It was not public before, but it's public now. Everyone can use it. At the moment, there are no NuGet packages for exactly this version, but since Manuel was so kind and give us like some insight on how to build the project and how to use like variables, I will make a video on how to compile it for your own version of XPO. If you're using XPO 18, for example, I can show you how to change the version and you will compile and you will end up with the NuGets that you need. Also, we will publish some official NuGets with this. And what was most important for us that we always talk about that with Manuel and also with Dennis in every email that we have with Dennis. He said that whatever code that you're going to publish, you need to put also the unit test or the integration test. So for all of this, we do have like unit test. So here we have the test project. So far, these are end unit, but we might move to tasty soon. So it depends on Manuel, basically. And that's pretty much it. If you have any questions about how to transport the data, you can just let us know. And you can just clone this repository. Let me show you the place again. So it's here. Just my username, which is Garim, then Bit Frameworks. You can just clone it. This is in the master already. I did it this morning. So you will get the PowerPoint. You will get this project also and all the unit tests. So far so good. We want to create more unit tests to do more coverage of our source code, source base, and then, or basically publish the official nuggets for these components. So that I will have to work in like what is left of the week and the weekend, but so far you can actually just clone the source and use it. And that's pretty much it, I will say. Oh, here we have one more person here. And Javier, I hear you speaking in the other room, but I cannot hear you speaking. I guess you're on mute also.
Sorry, I was on mute, so I could not, because I was typing. Yeah. I didn't want that to get on the video. So can you make me the host, Jose, so I can move forward? We have 40 minutes and a few common questions that we have found in our years developing SAF. So I think that we will take turns to answer them. And if anybody have any other question, please put it on the chat.
Jose, one quick question from my side. That really looks awesome, and I was thinking a completely different way how this works, but it's really cool to see it in action. Are there any limitations on, for example, request sizes and stuff like this,
well, we do like some handling of the data. We introduce compression if it's needed, and you can also skip it. That will be optional in this next version. And
but besides
that's why we use a post request. You can commit like really complex or heavy transactions, and they will just work. What we will do soon is that the same component will be able to use different versions of the HTTP client. Because some HTTP clients work best with, for example, WebAssembly that are not swallowed by the linker. So what we give is the ability to change the HTTP client implementation inside. So at the moment we're using REST Sharp, but in some cases that might not be useful or good for performance. So you can change it with the normal HTTP client and all of the other flavors that are of HTTP clients, because there are hundreds of them in internet.
Yeah.
So we only have one implementation, but it's open. You can create your own implementation. I guess we will make a video about that, like create your own HTTP client inside of the component. And also we will create like at least the one for Uno, because we're aiming a lot to Uno platform lately. So we want to create one that will work with WebAssembly, because we want to do web projects and we want to do it in the, like using Prism and using SAML basically. So in the end, we will have different implementation of the internal HTTP client. The component will still be the same. And so far so good. We've been using this for like almost 2 years, with only like a few problems in one customer from Stockholm, that he used member permissions, and that creates a lot of queries, and that can like drone, like basically it will be too much work for the HTTP request to do it like fast. That's why we want to create other scenarios, but that's the only case where sometimes once every 6 months something happened for 1 minute. But beside that, there is no other issues with the component. It's like really simple, and you can use it a lot, especially to transport the stuff between locations, especially if you're going to aim to mobile development with Xamarin, and you want to stick with XPO as your ORM or your data layer, you can use this actually.
So also, we have a couple of questions on the chat about the XPO API, and I will answer a few, but I will let you to continue, answer the other ones. So one is, can ASP.NET be used instead of WCF? What Jose showed, it was actually ASP.NET Core Web API, so that's definitely a yes. The other question is about authentication and security. So the XPO Web API is using GWT token. So it's definitely, you can actually configure that. So it's definitely secure. And one question that I think that is the most important is, how can we convince corporate customers about an unrecognized middleware architecture? So I think that my answer to that is open source. You can see exactly what it's doing. So there is nothing hidden. There is nothing that, if you go there and you check the code and you see something that you believe that is a security flaw, you can report it. Sorry. You can do a pull request, you can fix it, you can do anything. So there is nothing that we are hiding there. So if you have any concern whatsoever, or your customer have it, they can actually go and check the code.
Okay, Javier, and I'm going to expand on that question, is that, I mean, that's why we make this open source, because we got a lot of concerns about security from our customers. So in the end, it's like, well, that's too much. It's just there, just get it, see if it's secure for you. And even if you, if you run this through HTTPS, already there will be some security layer working, but you can override the method where you serialize the data and encrypt it also. So it can be, it can go through HTTPS, and the data inside that is going from one point to the other can be encrypted with your own encryption key as you want. So if they break that, is that they really want your data. You need to hire them for security advisors in your company. But in the end, that is like really not likely to happen. You can never say never, but of course it will be like really small possibility that something will happen. And you can add any other features, like we do add compression. So the request from the client might be like, I don't know, let's say like 300 kilobytes. But we compress it and it end up to be like 10 kilobytes. So if you're going to mobile, like if you're going to use this in mobile, where you have caps or limitations on the bandwidth, this is really neat, because it will save you a lot of bandwidth actually.
And for mobile, we have an XPO Lite SQL provider. So you are encrypted. So you are saving your data directly encrypted on your mobile. So if someone takes your application and pull it out and try to get your data, it's actually encrypted. So
yes,
you
actually,
you have all that choices. You have all that choices if you need if you're concerned about security.
you can have like security in all levels. You can have like in the HTTPS level, like the SSL certificate, you can encrypt your own data inside, and then you can store it because we have an SQLite provider that is encrypted, that the database in your mobile phone or whatever you're using device, it will be also encrypted and not readable for anyone else. So also about, Javier, about the security is like, we do implement the standard functionality for ASP.NET Core API controllers. There is an authenticate attribute. And also we have a login component that you can just go, process your username and password and get a token. And you can include that token in the connection string. I mean, that's, I would say like, that's the most common scenario, but I wanted to do a really simple scenario for this demonstration. I guess I will do a video with all the use cases. But yes, it's supported and is, I will say that it's really safe, it's really secure.
Great. So we have 30 more minutes. So let's try to make the most of it. We have a lot of questions here. Most of them are just simple questions or just like questions that we get now and then. For example, people that have never used SAF, they always ask like, why should I use SAF? Should I start a project with SAF today? Or if SAF is going to be scalable, how is the performance in SAF? How about UI customization? Because they only give me this set of UI. So let's go one by one, and a few of them are the same one, just like split it out. Like when I say, what is the object space session and unit of work, or what is the purpose of the object space inside the view? So they are kind of the same question, but it's just, we have got these questions quite a lot. So I think that it would be good for Dave or Manuel, Jose, just to give their experience when they are approaching with any of these ones. So the first one is simple. Should I start a project with SAF today?
Should we do a quick one? Everyone does one question with like one sentence?
Yeah, that we can definitely do that.
Sure.
The first one is easy. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, da, sí. How do you say yes in German?
Yeah. Oder jawohl, or absolutely is like definitely, yeah.
So I will say that I have not found a project that I have worked on that I don't include SAF in some way or another one. Even if my UI is completely no SAF, I do the backend on SAF. Even if something, if there is no SAF related, I will do an admin tool on SAF. I will do a test on SAF. So in some way or another one, I always use SAF. There is no way that I don't use SAF in any of my projects. So yes, definitely, this is a great time to be a SAF developer, especially with Blazor coming on, with Blazor on Linux, with .NET that is now running everywhere. So definitely, yes. So I already talked about this for starting in SAF. One of the great videos is the Dave and Alan getting started with SAF. This is a nice video to walk you through from beginning to, and actually in the end, it gets a little more complex doing things with the I don't even remember now, nested template or something like that. They did a nice demonstration there, and reading the support tickets is a really great tool. I will always say get involved in the community. I cannot say that enough. If you get involved in the communities, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, you get to ask questions, and there is never a stupid question. We all were beginners at some point. So if you get involved, you learn a lot about that. And that's my question. It wasn't one sentence, but Manuel, go further.
So
Number three.
It's
a hard one.
No, it depends. What about scalability? The scalability isn't something special about XAF. It's every application has to come some kind of scaling measure. How much users do I have? How much resources? How much databases? How much concurrent users do you need? And of course, what kind of architecture you choose. And all have pros and cons and drawbacks and opportunities. The one thing I need to say about scalability, with every new .NET version and with every technology change, like containerization, Docker stuff, and like things like that, every application can scale if you do it in the right level. For example, for WinForms application, you can scale on thousands or 10,000s of users if you put the right amount of work into it. For the normal web one, it is harder because ASP.NET, the old ASP.NET is much harder to scale. But now with Blazor and Web API and all those kind of stuff, it gets more easier and manageable and approachable. So there's no silver bullet, and there's nothing special about XAF in scale.
And I think with the XAF web, the classic ASP.NET, I mean, because it's stateful rather than stateless, it was to date kind of the hardest to scale.
Yeah.
Things like the Azure Redis cache, I think, help with that significantly.
Yes, yeah, definitely. But it's all the same. It's like it's more like architecture that helps with scale, not the technology behind it. So it's nothing special about XAF on scale.
Actually, to add something here is that all the limitations that, or most of the limitations that you will have in SAF or XAF, I don't know how you call it in your normal language, we call it SAF actually, are related to .NET, not to SAF itself. Yeah. Especially in web projects, the limitation is a limitation of web forms. It's not a limitation of SAF actually.
It's a session size, yeah.
So basically when people ask me, it's like, I will not use SAF because of the limitations. You will have exactly the same limits in web forms. So you're not running away from anything.
And that's the neat thing about Blazor. So
yes, that's the neat thing about Blazor, that you can scale like vertically, not horizontally, because we do have a case in El Salvador where they use the IIS forest type of layout, so you can scale horizontally, but that also is not related at all. We use the same code in the SAF application. It's about the infrastructure that they set up according to the database server and also the IIS layout. But again, it's not related to SAF. It's something that is .NET. It's how .NET works actually. So
okay.
let's move to the next one. Maybe...
Yeah, just quickly. One thing that I think that might get confused sometimes is because if we read the support ticket, a lot of time when we're talking about scalability, the tickets say because the way SAF was designed, because the way SAF was coded, we are not able to scale to. And I think that a lot of time confused people, and even I got confused a lot of time because at the end, SAF is a regular SAF ASP.NET Web Form, is a regular SAF WinForms application. So the same issues that you're having there, you will have it here. It's not SAF directly. So that was just my 2 cents. Okay, what about performance?
I think you can turn it the same. It's the same idea. Is it simple? Does it only one thing, or is it configurable and all the kind of stuff? The more you do, the less performance an application could get, or it depends how you name performance. What's your call on this, Dave?
That's a really broad topic, but if I want to put my 2 cents in there, is that in general, I will say that performance is really good. It's almost the same as ADO.NET or ADO.NET, as you can call it. Basically, the main problem with performance is that XPO is really easy to use, and it provides lazy loading. So you can go through all the property trees and load all database if you want to just get one value from the settings. You go like customer, profile, role, settings, and then you're loading basically all the related objects. So in general, what is the best about XPO is the feature that gets more abuse, especially if you're a beginner. That is like, I'm in the customer, how do I get to this property like 10 entities away? You just go dot something and you will get it. But you think, oh, it's easy, but you didn't go from point A to point C in the end. You went through all of them in between. So you load basically half your schema. So regarding performance, I would say that performance is really good if you know how to avoid the problems that lazy loading will have. And those problems will be also attached to entity framework. If you're doing entity framework and you're abusing the lazy loading, again, your performance will be low. So it's about understanding why is the performance low.
I think that that is a problem that every ORM has. It's not XPO, it's not entity framework. We have the N+1 problem that you're gonna load all orders of this invoice of this customer just to get one property. So it's depending on how you design your application. It's not a SAF problem. It's about yourself, how you're doing the code. And believe me, if you have to think how I'm gonna load all this data from the database by hand, you have to do SQL connection, you have to do other.NET, you wouldn't do customer.invoice.thing. You will think twice because you will have to do a lot of more code. But because it's so easy, people get.
Yes, if you want to do if you have to do a query yourself to load related data, you will think it twice. But if you can do customer.category.name, you will do it because it's so easy. And then is where the performance problems start, basically.
But one thing that it gets overlooked is like SAF offers a lot of solutions to that. SAF data view. SAF sounds like you only bring in the data that you need. You don't have to bring all the related object, all the things. You have the layer attribute to not bring anything more than you need.
And one thing that I will say, Javier, and we get this question a lot, and I mean a lot every day, is like, since SAF is saving you so much time creating your UI and everything that takes an awful amount of time, just create models and see how they load and think a little bit more about performance in the beginning. Design your ORM, test it. And but test it not with 10 records. It will always be fine with 10 records. I mean, Javier created a video about Bogus, which is the data mocking API. Put 100,000. I mean, measure it according to the size of your business, according to the size of your organization, and then tweak it for that. To get what you want.
One thing that I have on my notes is after Blazor gets a little more stable and with a little more modules, I will put it on Azure and I will do load balancing. I will create 100,000 concurrent users and I will give you guys some tests after, some results after that.
Well, also a small announcement in here. We do have a load balancer component it's open source, it's there. We didn't show it in this video, but you can do like a single write, multiple read, or read the first one that is available. So I guess we will show that in another video, but it's there. It's in that source that I show you.
Nice. I would say, in terms of performance for me, the two biggest pieces are kind of what you touched on in terms of the design of your application, getting those really big fields, those kind of unlimited data field of big data blobs into a separate table that aren't accessed all the time would be kind of number one. Because when you're trying to query a table that is 20 gigs, it just takes a little longer to get through it. The other piece is calculated fields. So every time you do a calculated field, it does a separate query out for every single record. And if you're touching one of those big tables in particular, which we just went through ourselves, you know, the database lags in terms of returning that result, but then you're sitting there waiting for the result based on what's coming across the wire as well. So we separated those out. We got rid of the calculated fields and persisted instead, and we took, you know, a minute to load a view down to 2 seconds where it should be.
Nice.
Yeah, actually here, like here in the meeting with us is one of our customers from Argentina, Herman, and he used a lot of calculate fields. So really nice input, Dave, on what you said, because I try to avoid them in most of the time. And in my design, I don't use them.
Sometimes there are calculated fields that loads a whole collection. So I have invoice and it will load all the orders or something just to get one. That's definitely gonna affect performance.
I think that's like the whole idea about this. How's it normally called? It's like command query responsibility principle. We have, okay, for simple stuff, it doesn't matter if you do some calculated fields on the fly, but for complex, more complex stuff, or for lots of records, it's a great idea to cache the value. If it's absolutely crucial that you get it on point in time, so it's like eventual absolute or atomic consistency at the read level, you're doomed, at least with normal technologies, or with normal SQL storage kind of stuff. But if you are, okay, calculate some data, it doesn't need to be accurate in the second time frame. It's in the minute time frame. Do a background process, calculate the stuff, put it back into the storage, read it flat from there. And of course, for smaller things or for small projects, this whole architecture thing, it's like this whole whole scale of how much effort is worth the performance cost. It's the same thing about the scalability, I guess.
No, absolutely. And there are a lot of things that we can do, like, for example, for dashboards. Sometimes you want to load all the orders from all the customers, from all the things, and it loads too many things, like a work order, all the labor, all the parts, all the things. Like, I think that when you get at that point that you have to join 7 tables, we can do a view on the database and just give that view to the dashboard. It will improve performance greatly. And not even that, even Azure has a replication database that do a replication of your data, and then you do the reports, not on your database that you're using, but in the other one. So it's all depending on how much time or how much effort you want to put, but you can make applications really performant.
I think that the thing is, there is no holy grail on that, and XAF provides some strategies about this, but there is no way to go to get into maximum performance.
There is no magic formula for each case. You have to understand your design. I mean, your ORM design, your class design, and then
pick your poison.
Yeah, then you need to know where are going to be the pressure points on it, and just work with them isolated. This thing like, okay, I want to load this as fast as I can. Usually it's reporting, the place where you do that.
And I have seen a few applications that I have had that the customer is, but I want all my fields there in case that I want to do a column chooser instead of I want to do something like that. Is that, and you're like, how often do you do that? If you want really fast and you don't really use that often, just drop it. Just load anything you need and that's it. But if you want to have all your data on there just for in case, it's gonna suffer a little bit. So you have to do the trade-off. It's up to you.
And that's a really nice point you made there, because I had almost all the time a discussion with clients, not customers. There was like, okay, and how to drag columns in there that you missed in the report, because he didn't tell us the right kind of data he was looking at. It's like, okay, I am so used to XAF dragging stuff in and then complaining about performance. But those are power users. They use the XAF, a grid system, and all that stuff to an extent you can't imagine. And then once in a while they say, "Oh, it's and now it's slow."
Yeah,
that's sometimes we it's better to get the user a little bit out of the complexity of software design or database design and just say, okay, no, end users shouldn't do.
Yeah, no, I will say if I have to do a con of XAF, or let's say something that I don't like about XAF, and I do like it. It's over functionality. So we give the user more functionality that they need, so they expect you support more that they actually need. So if this action about reset view settings is here, then you have to support that action. You don't even use that.
Documentation.
You don't need that. You don't use that. So we are most of the time hiding functionality instead of adding functionality.
That's sometimes a problem, and Dave, I have no idea how you thinking about this. Sometimes I think they put too much stuff in the standard modules.
Yeah, I mean, we get the question about save and close all the time.
Yeah, we get the reset view settings, which we often move to like the tools tab instead, just to get it out of the way, because people want it to be more simplistic, because it is too. I mean, it's too powerful. Sometimes you got to turn stuff off, and you feel bad doing it, but it is what it is.
Yeah, but you will have always a happy customer if you hide things, and when they request it, you give it to them. That is the other way around. If you give them too much and they are overwhelmed, they don't know how to do it, it's not working right, I don't have documentation, you're not supporting me, so it's better to go the other way around.
We should brainstorm sometimes to do like a normalized module that cuts out all the functionality of XAF and put it to a bare minimum.
Agree.
Yeah,
agree.
The simple
for some
module.
customers, it's like normalized CSS, like with the browser things. So they reset everything so that everything behaves the same. It's like load this module and you just get the simplistic thing of XAF. For some customers, I think that would be a great start to get some confusion about that out of the way. But we got totally off topic as we do always.
Let's move forward. We have a couple of questions. I don't know if we're going to have time to go over all of them here today. If not, we can come back to them on the next one. But okay, one thing that again, SAF does the views for you. It generates the view based on your business model. So what about the UI customization? If I want to do a really specific UI.
You can do whatever you want on every platform. There is one exception, it's Blazor for now, but that's okay because it's in development or in heavy development right now. You can change every aspect of the UI. I didn't come across some kind of UI customization I couldn't do. Sometimes it's not UI customization per se from visual aspect. Sometimes it's behavioral, and that is a little bit into this idea of this normalized XAF thing, because sometimes stuff can interfere in the UI. The only thing that is a little bit hard to, if you know DevExpress and know the designers and all kind of that stuff, sometimes it's you need more to drop into controller code and know more of the specifics that are good implemented in the normal WinForms designer stuff that you normally would use, like with drag drop a button and show a grid and something like this. But you can do everything. There's no limitations, I think. You can.
Depends on the amount of effort you want to put into it at the end of the day, right?
So,
yeah,
of course.
Actually, when they ask me that question, I tell them, well, the limitation is time and budget.
Yeah.
I can spend as much time doing the UI exactly as you want. If you want everything to be black and white with cuts showing out of the text box, I will do it for you. But it doesn't come out of the box. You will, I mean, that is something that you will add time and money basically to the project. Because the main reason for me to use SAF, because I consider myself a back-end programmer. I'm not related to UI at all. I mean, you should see my UIs; they are awful, and my PowerPoints. And for that, you should call Javier. He's good with that.
No, but for example, take a look at this. Take a look at this. This is just like a point of sale. You have your categories, your products. You can click on it, and it can be kind of touched in a Windows tablet because it's a Windows base, and you click on it, and it send it to your order. You can scan the barcode. You can delete it. So you have a So you can type the price and everything. So it's definitely customizable. That's
Yes.
the only
that's
thing
the
that I have
answer.
to say.
I never saw such a great chat experience UI on.
Yeah, we did. I did.
That's awesome.
Let me see if I can hide this.
But I'm not very good at mobile and touch UI.
No,
So.
this is a Windows tablet. And you know that the Windows Phone has this enable touch mode UI that it makes bigger the controllers. So we use that and we make like a point of sale that you have the categories that you can select. For example, baked goods, beverage, and then you can click. You see now it's smaller because we do the enable. And actually, I use for that one the Yamachan font size controller, so I can grade the font size, and then you can add it to your card, and then you can pay. So it's exactly time and budget. If you have time and budget, let me know what you want to do. We'll get it done.
Where should I put the cats?
Exactly. So next question. And all these four are the same one. It's like object space, session, unit of work, object space with a view, when to use session, when to use object space, nested object space, and root object space. So
large question, simple answer. All of them are supposed to do the data access for the database if you have one, or non-persistent object space. It's like there's a mix match. But the thing is, let me roll up from the back. Unit of work is a unit of work object in XPO that tracks transactions and changes of objects. Session is basically the same thing without tracking the changes automatically. And an object space is the XAF implementation that abstracts away XPO and the session and unit of work concept. So you have an object space and you have an XP object space, XP object space that works under the hood with sessions and unit of works. There's also an EF object space if you're working with entity framework, for example.
And it's important to know that, I mean, when XAF first came out, there was no iObject space. It was just object space.
Yes.
Applied directly to XPO using sessions or units of work. Session being the base class of unit of work. And then when they tried to put in the entity, or when they did put in the entity framework implementation on top of that, that's when they put it into an interface. And I think the object space layer is designed to work with more of the UI elements. So when are things modified? When do we enable and disable actions based on things being committed or modified at that point? So that's really it is the kind of wrapper around the underlying data layer, but it also has a bit of functionality in terms of driving the application as well.
Yes. Yeah. So 8, when to use the session and when to use object space. Always choose object space because it is ORM agnostic. So if you later want to decide for what crazy reason, whatever, to choose entity framework or your own ORM mapper, you are not likely to change your business code. When to use session or unit of work if you really need special features that XPO provides.
So that's something like doing a large data import works a little bit better if you're using the session or the unit of work, because you're not constantly hitting the UI end at that point.
Or you need to grabbing some kind of guts inside the XPO layers, like for example, all the dirty stuff Jose did with the data layer with XPO Web API. Then you need to work with that. But for the normal CRUD application and business logic, go for object space.
So do you guys ever use Entity Framework in any of your applications with XAF?
I experimented and I never did in production, or it never left demo status for me. But I know Kirsten Greed, for example. She's using Entity Framework really successfully. So pick your poison. If you are experienced with XPO, go with the XPO one. If you already have a lot of data models with Entity Framework, you can use Entity Framework, and you can choose both of them. You can use them in the same application.
I always tell people to use XPO unless they're an entity framework guru.
Yeah.
When they come back for help with the entity framework, I kind of go.
That's
Yeah,
my point of view as well. Yes.
Actually, we do the same here in the office, and it's like, unless you really know what you're doing in Entity Framework, I mean, if you know how you're an expert, you know everything about the ins and outs of Entity Framework, go for Entity Framework. But if you don't know, if you have only done like the entity save and load, forget about it. They stick with XPO because in my case, I'm most experienced with XPO, I will say. And also, just to finish this idea about these 4 questions, is like to avoid that mismatch between using sessions at the entity level and use iObject space in the controllers level. They do have an interface that you can implement in your persistent objects that they will inject the object space inside of the object when it's loaded. So when you're in the context of the object, you can use the object space actually. So it's good because in that sense, it will like normalize your data access to use object space all the time.
Yeah.
It's not that common. Most people don't use it like that. And especially since, for example, Dave, Manuel, and I come from long time ago with SAF, we're just used to it. We don't use those type of tricks. But if you're a new person going into SAF, maybe that will make more sense for you.
Even myself, that I'm newer, I'm just like from 2014, and I'm just a baby on this. I have never got to production in an entity framework. I have done prototypes. I have tried to. It doesn't make sense for me. Like the customer has to be like again like a entity framework really passionate person to actually see a benefit of getting into the entity framework part, because XPO, it gets so much like it's out of the box. It's like everything you want is right there. In entity framework, a lot of time you have to go and look for like what is the workaround for this specific task that is working out of the box. OData, if you were doing those OData before, that's XPO out of the box. XPO have the model designer, so it's a good choice that DevExpress have that for who need it. But I don't think that is the first class citizens.
I did one project because of there was some advanced OData stuff I did really with a customer together, and we needed really customizable web API stuff with really crazy security stuff like this, and we decided to remap the same database with Entity Framework, and then we used Entity Framework in combination with XAF as a testing tool to see what kind of data is coming out and in of the system based on the security rules they needed to implement. So would I use it for a normal business line of application? Probably not in a long-term goal. But as application grows, and as I say, pick your poison. Whatever makes you happy. XPO is longer around and it's really well tested, and everything has its pros and cons.
So guys, before we move forward, I want to ask a question. I'm really enjoying the session. I do love this a lot, but we have been 2 hours. We can continue and finish all the questions. We can leave it for the next session. Up to you. I am happy with both choices. I have 2 beers. I'm happy and can keep talking for 1 more hour. But again, I don't want to make this too long for anybody who has to come back to work or anything like that. So
I'm on vacation anyway, so.
I can do another
my beautiful pool down there. So.
Okay, I think that we can finish all the questions that we have in half an hour. Let's set that to.
Then let's grab me another beer, and I'll be right back. We can start.
So, okay, so I will take the next question. Is that where should I put my business logic? Okay, if you're going to do a small business logic, like calculations, like you need per quantity, just do it in the XPO level. And if you're going to do more complex stuff, try to do like what you will do with domain components, that you will have like customer logic or customer helper, where you have all the operations for the helper for the customer, because that will make your class like more clean. The XPO class should only contain the get and set of the representation of the object, so should not include as many methods as you will want. You can use extension methods also if you like extension methods instead of helpers, but I would prefer to put it in a separate class instead, unless it's something like you need price per quantity, which is the most simple case that you will do a multiplication. And also, if you do it that way, it will be easier to unit test your logic. So lately we've been like really deep into unit testing, like, because it looks like more work at the beginning, but it really pays in the end. Every time that you release, you're really sure that your system will work because you run all the unit tests, and something is broken, is something that you didn't test. You add the test, and for the next time, you have more coverage in the end. So I will say that I prefer like a small logic, like multiplications, XPO level. Then otherwise, I will create a separate class with the logic, or like as a helper or extension for that entity. I don't know about Manuel and Dave.
So Jose, we're gonna get to testing because that's one of the last questions that I have only there for Manuel. But questions like when we say where we should put the business logic, we have the controller. That's a place that we can put the business logic. We have the unchanged. So when something changes, we can do some business logic. We have the set. So, and for example, we have the action attribute that we can do an action right on our business logic. I know, but I have work in projects that when I get to the project, when I start working on the project, every action was on the business logic. So we spent a lot of time just hiding the action because it was showing everywhere and we didn't want it everywhere. So instead of doing a view controller, they put it on the business logic in the object, and we have to hide it everywhere because it was showing in all the view. So again, is this action that you just say don't do it? Is the unchanged? Is the view controller? Is the setter? Where should I put it? Anyone?
Okay, Manuel, go ahead.
Let Dave first. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not listed as bad as best practice from DevExpress. I typically, if it's simple changes, I'm putting things into the setters. As long as you're putting that check for it's not loading and it's not saving. I put very simple things in there because it's very readable. You can see what's going on. What I do see a lot of is the unchanged method getting called and people dumping a ton of logic in there. And that ends up causing more confusion than it does good in a lot of cases. I'd be interested in knowing what you guys do for scenarios where maybe you're trying to pick a client first and then you have a contact underneath, and that contact has a data source property attribute tied to it to say, only pick contacts that are available to that customer.
Oh, that's
Go for it, Manuel, go for it.
That's a great question. If I understood it correctly. It depends on your kind of application. If you have some kind of a parent-child relationship, like in this kind of thing, where you say, okay, let's display a list of children that's filtered to some kind of property to the parent. The filtering isn't the bad part. The bad part is rather like when do I need to change my parent depending on some kind of criteria, and that there I found the pattern that worked for me the best is like a client calling the parent. So it's like notifying about some change that were made to an aggregate collection and something like this, and then doing the logic on the kind of tree structure or aggregate, if you call it.
are you putting validation in place then on the parent object or on that object to say, is this client part of that, or is this contact part of the client?
I normally think this is more like a visitor approach kind of thing, but basically all the kind of validation logic is like that the logic itself sits somewhere. I don't care, but the thing that's triggering the validation is the child object, and then telling the parent, hey, something is wrong or everything is right with me. And then the parent is aggregating all the changes. So that's, I think, an approach that really worked for me in a lot of parent-child scenario kind of things without having all kinds of crazy events.
So it will be like a push approach instead of pulling.
Yes,
so you're not asking, it's always telling.
It's like the Hollywood principle. It's the Hollywood principle. The parent is like, okay, I get called from the client if something has changed, rather than the parent
notifying the child.
Or asking to the
asking, but ultimately the thing that is doing the final check, like some kind of setting a boolean with a rule for bool property value, for example, is sitting on the parent, and then I call parent on property change. So the UI gets informed about the right kind of structure.
I feel like there's an opportunity to provide a controller that looks for those data source property items.
I wrote one of these, but it can get pretty for the normal 99 or 90% cases. It's rather easy to write, but it's like a diamond star problem where you have like if you have like two validation rules, for example, that needs to match a certain criteria that's based on additional properties. Let's get really whoop beer. But the thing is, I think there is an opportunity to make this easier, of course.
That's the great thing that I like about this type of meeting, because from here a lot of ideas come up. So we can do a base module with hiding everything that is over functional. We can do some other controller that take care of this, and so on, so on.
Yeah, and you know, Javier, that the communication master detail is always something that you know that we usually, one of the stream of income is like we do a lot of training, and we have trained, I don't know, like 50, 60 companies in Latin America and then Europe and so on. So I always get the question like, Jose, can you show like how you calculate the total on the master base on the detail? And it's
no,
I don't want that question. I don't want to show that code because it can get really messy. And it's like,
write the controller, write the module profit.
yeah. I mean, but I get that question a lot, like how you calculate like totals in the master based on the detail. So I guess we will have to put just one meetup to do that. It's like, this is the way you should calculate the totals.
There's one thing I want to add about this question, because it's telling, it's kind of calling it business logic. And I really hate this term. Because business logic can be anything. When I hear people about talking about business logic, often they mean like, okay, and how is my button communicating with this, and what's that, and what's the business logic for me in the end is really that kind of logic that makes your if you have some kind of financial application, for example, the tax calculation stuff and stuff like this, if you have such a huge amount of business logic that you have to multiple kind of calculations based on other properties and based on that and based on that and stuff like this, I don't think there is any place you can put this inside an XPO object or a controller, stuff like this. Those are really domain models. Those are really, really hardcore calculative stuff. And those shouldn't be in the data layer or data XPO or layer at all.
I think, Manuel, that the best way to see it is that if you ever use domain components, there is really clear, because you have the persistence, you have the definition of the object, just like an interface. Well, you only have the get and set, and that's it. And then you have a separate class for the logic. But I like it that way. And I did a lot of projects using like domain components, personal projects, of course, but all of them went in production. But in the end, the main problem of that is that you end up having like a lot of files, like you have like customer logic, customer logic 2, like extended logic. And I mean, it will always be a problem depending on how much you use it. So
the thing is, for example, if I say, for example, the tax calculation stuff, kind of stuff, and I do it now, we can use XPO on the client side of on client devices and the WASM and Blazor and all the kind of stuff. It's getting easier because it's more back to the normal kind of stuff we used to do it. But business logic is everything that makes your application work as a whole, or at least brings profit, except for usability kind of stuff, which also where to be the calculation logic, if you will. So, and it depends how.
I will actually do. I will put it in this sentence. It's like. I will put it in a class that I can instantiate easily, so I can unit test it later.
Yes.
Because if you ask me, like, why don't I put it in the controller? To put it in the controller in the handler of the action will be exactly the same as put it in a Windows form in the handler of the button. Then you need to instantiate the button or the form to create your business logic. So put it in a place where you can instantiate it easily, so you can unit test it. That will be like the last answer. Because if not, you will depend on instantiating different objects that might be hard for you to do in unit testing scenarios. Then it will be Then you will say, like, I will not test it. Then you will get the wrong calculations when someone process invoice, and then it's a lot of other change of stuff. So I would say, like, try to do it like in the most simplistic way, where you can instantiate it and attach the customer or whatever object it is, so you can unit test it. Basically, that's I would say that my answer.
I think that's exactly the thing. I think if it's easy and it stays easy, it should be easy. If it's get more complicated, refactor it out. If you use it a lot, refactor it out. Make it more modular. It's normal software development. And the place that the business logic moves around the application will eventually grow in one or the other direction. It depends how it's used.
It can be extension methods if you want. I mean,
I will say something just to everyone who is listening to us and they are a beginner or something. I will definitely recommend testing for sure. I have not worked in a company that I have pushed testing that they were doing testing before. I have not. I have not done a project that I have not been the one pushing testing. Most of the company or project that I have worked on, there has been non-testing whatsoever. So don't get scared. It's just like take it as an advice to start doing it, because it really pays. It really avoids regression. It really avoids a lot of issues later on. But most of the company or projects that I have worked on, there is non-testing whatsoever. And we'll get to that, to the testing question, and Manuel will expand on that. And not only that, he will talk a little bit about tasty. It's funny to see that the song here is really hard, and in Manuel
Yeah.
Windows,
No,
goes
it's
down.
it's not the sun. It's a lamp that it's reflecting. It's because it's a window garden.
but it looks like the sunset. It looks like the sun going down.
There's my screen behind my back is a window, or not the only window, because there's all kind of crazy spa stuff going on.
Right.
But it looks like, yes, but it's just the lamp up there.
Got
But
it.
you know that well, right now I'm a citizen of Arizona, but I usually live in Russia.
But it
In
really
Russia, you
looks
can see the
nice.
sun like 2 a.m. in the morning and it's there. You can see it at midnight in the summer. You can see
Yeah.
it all the time, every day, every moment of the day is day.
Yeah, Dave, I don't know if you know, Jose, he was visiting here for just a few days, and the COVD came, and he was unable to leave. He cannot get to Russia, he cannot come back to Salvador, he cannot go anywhere.
Yeah.
So he's stuck here in
He's in
Arizona.
good company anyway, so.
So I will
I'm
answer
at least still in Austria, at least.
So I will answer the next two questions because they are pretty simple. So they've already expanded greatly on Windows controller and view controller. So the controller life cycle, you can see it. So if it's a view controller that you're doing a view, the unactivated happens every time that you open that view, the undeactivated when you close that view, etc., etc. So there is an on-views control created. That is when the view is getting created. So that doesn't happen for the Windows controller. The Windows controller is going to be applied for the unactivated. It will happen when you open the application to the main window. Or so that's pretty much the few differences. What do you want to run? And they've already expanded on that a lot, so I won't get more in deep on that. But I just wanted to clarify that. So one thing that it comes a lot is like when you want to do an agnostic message box, an agnostic message for Windows and web. So in Windows, it's pretty simple. Extra message box dot show, and you show your message. In web, you have to do some type of I don't know, alert or some type of, but there is not something like the message box. So right now we have the show view strategy, show message that give you a toast or something like that. But a lot of time, the really nice solution is just create a non-persistent class that it will give you a detailed view, and then you show your message right there. So I think that that will be, if I have to say, what will be my agnostic version of Windows and web message dialogue or whatever, it will be, let's do a non-persistent class. Let's put what we want there, like a message property that we can add some text there, and then we do that for Windows and web, and good to go.
Yeah, that's basically my dialogues module in Xenial. It's non-persistent object, label control, and show view in pop-up window, and you're done.
Nice.
Let me circle back to the controller lifecycle for 1 second, because I think something really important that gets missed a lot is people not unsubscribing from things properly.
Yes.
In
Agree.
I did a video on this where I actually inspected the memory, and I sent it to Dennis and the XAF team to look at, and they came back and said, don't publish that. Only because the way that I portrayed it looked like an XAF specific problem, but in reality it's a .NET problem, right? Yes. It happens all the time. But all I can tell people is make sure if you subscribe to something, especially if it's a global item like the application, make sure you unsubscribe from it.
Okay. Yeah, there's a neat thing right there, because the thing Noxa did with like the reactive modules and all of that stuff, they gave you back an eye disposable, and if you don't dispose, there's an analyzer that tells you, hey, you didn't dispose this instance, which don't happen with event handlers, and that's, I think, a shame that the .NET development team didn't do a lot of work into events lately to write some analyzers that prevent that happening. But probably that's something we should do as a community as well. ReSharper does it, for example, I guess, or there was some analyzer that says, oh, you didn't subscribe from this event.
I will have to say I will have to say I do enjoy, or I do like a lot, the reactive programming model. I think that is.
But it's hard to get your mind about that. So.
Exactly. But one thing that like expand is a really nice open source set of modules, set of framework. But I do believe that React is not for the beginner. if it doesn't have a nice documentation that you can follow through. A lot of time, I have been developing some for a while, and I get completely lost. I don't know what he's saying. And it's like, if you want me to use your model, give me some pointers, because I'm right now just like shooting at the dark. And he does have a really reactive modules integration with SAF, but I still haven't completely grasped how he's using it. But I would love that, because I use reactive UI in Xamarin a lot of time, and I completely see the advantage. I completely like it. I completely see it's readable, it's fluent, but again, sometimes it's like you can have the better product, but if you don't have a way for someone to start using it right away, nothing. You have nothing.
Yeah, and just the last line before we move to the next question is like, as Dave said, that we get this question a lot, that should I use the events of the controller like on activated event, or should I use the method that is overwritten already on the templates when you add new? And what they did is that to avoid memory leaks, they created when you in the template you do add new controller, and you will see on activated overridden, on the activated overridden. It's because they want to make sure that you disconnect the handler, like you unwire the handler of that. Because you can, it was not like that before. You didn't have the overridden methods there, like obviously. You have to, constructor, like get the event, wire it, and you leave it like that forever. And then you think like, why my application is just growing in memory nonstop? And it was like 300 megabytes in the morning at 8 a.m. But now I'm about to leave the office, and it's like a gigabyte on memory. Why? Because you never unwire the handlers. But that also is not related to XAF or XPO or Developer Express. It's .NET. So I always tell my students, especially because I do a lot of trainings, it's like some stuff are inherited from .NET in general. So the more you understand .NET, the easy will you understand SAF. And also I tell them, like, if you try to understand what domain components is and what solid development is, SAF will be way easier. Because it is. It's like really easy. They use all the most common patterns, more accepted patterns for design in general. So don't try to understand SAF as it is. Try to understand the patterns, and SAF will be like a piece of cake. It will be obvious for you in all senses. But if you don't understand the patterns, then you will ask this question and you will not know where they go. Because I will say that 99% of the questions that I get, the answer is .NET stuff. It's not SAF stuff. Don't think it like that. It's .NET works like that. And if you understand how .NET works, you will understand why SAF is working this way. So it's like, go ahead and go back to your object-oriented programming classes of the university of your school or whatever, of Wikipedia, and everything will make more sense in that if you do that.
All right, let's move forward. So
I think the next three are related together because they are all XPO related stuff.
Who wants to get them? Maybe Dave, who was looking to the other side.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, so 13, 14, and 15 are yours, Dave.
Why is the get set? Yeah.
And the unsaving, the unsaving happens a lot of time. If you put a breakpoint there, you will see it, that it hits the breakpoint more than once. And if I'm not interrupting Dave, like let's say that you have a collection, you have a nested child. So when you save there, it won't save completely to the database until the root object space will save. So it actually hit the breakpoint of that child before, and then when it hits the parents, it will hit it again. And so there are a lot of cases like that. And Dave, you can continue, but that's just one of the scenarios.
Yeah, that's for the on-saving for sure. For the get and set of the properties, it's actually both. There's a lot happening when you first query that data and then put it into an XPO object and then bind it to a control and then show that control, right? There's going to be a lot of hitting that class with getters and setters because every step along the way, it's interacting with that property. And so, yeah, it's going to hit it over and over again, which is why that is saving is loading method, the properties are in there. So you can tell kind of how far along the life cycle of that persistent object you are.
Manuel, do you want to add something? Because I have.
Yes, yeah, sure. The main reason for the first one is like especially if you're using a unit of work, which XAF does by default, is like you have to do all the kind of property change tracking between objects and properties, and when they change, it is this value, the same value as the before value, to reduce overhead and performance impacts and stuff like this. There's one thing that I don't want to mention too much, but it exists if you have like to the WCF data layer kind of stuff that throws people off the most, because they are interacting both sides on the client and on the server with the object model. That's what was my question before, and then they get totally confused because it gets hitting on the client and it gets hitting on the client again, and then my business logic runs twice, and then all kinds of calculations go wrong. Why? The reason is that's how XPO interacts with persistent classes and objects. What's the solution or the reason? I just told you. What's how to avoid it? Always use is saving and is loading, and sometimes is invalidated if you do business logic in setters and getters, especially if you do it in the setter or on saving stuff.
Okay, then my 2 cents in here is like, I will just go like deeper into this stuff. I'm not going to answer in the XPO SAF way. I will say that I need to find where that book is, because there is one book that is called Event-Driven Design. I need to find it somewhere. I have it somewhere in my computer or back in El Salvador or in Roche. I don't know where it is, but they said that the biggest problem with event-driven design, and actually .NET is designed on events, like UI events, you click something and the handler execute a delegate, is that the events propagate in a way that you might not know about it. So if you're listening to events, sometimes a lot of stuff will trigger out of your control. So if it's like event-driven design, then you will need to actually go and see how the events relate to each other to understand how they are working like that. And .NET in general is event-driven. I mean, at least the UI is like you have a handler, the handler will execute an action or a delegate or whatever. So on event-driven design, you don't know how much it will propagate, and will loop back to execute the same method again because the event is triggering again and again and again. So, I mean, I will try to find that book because I don't know who was the writer, but I will post it somewhere because I thought it was really interesting, because that is in general is a flaw of the design pattern if you design your systems event-driven. I remember when I was able to write my own events, that I thought, like, this is so neat. I can write a delegate, and then I can write my own event, and just trigger everywhere. And then I start to do events for everything. And then everything started going out of control, like everything was triggered out of control. So when you do your own events and you try to understand how they work, you will understand also the problems that they have, that anything that is event-driven will trigger more than you think, actually, in general. And that's basically it. And I will take also number 15, that is what's the difference between find object and get object. Find object is going to go and get it from the data layer, from the data access layer. So we will basically query the database. And get object is that maybe you have 2 object spaces and the object is loaded in one and not in the other. So to bring that instance to the other object space, you have to use get object. It's not find object. So that's the main difference between those 2 methods.
Yeah, if I can add, like all the ORM, the XPO has an identity map. that it will have saved there the objects that you have in memory. So the find objects, it won't even look there. It will go directly and query the database. The get object by key will get and check the cache and see if the object is there. So if it's there, you will avoid that trip to the database. And every trip to the database is costly. You will pay some performance time for that. So believe me, if you have the ID and you can do get object by key, that will always be more performance. If it doesn't come with a data corruption or something that is not bringing the new data from the database or something like that. But if it's a perfectly fine approach, that's the way to go. Because find object, it doesn't matter. He will always go to the database. Get object by key will check the cache, and then it will give you the object. Okay,
there is actually an additional parameter you can pass into the find object to look for something that's already in session, but I think it ends up basically calling the get object anyway.
Oh, nice. And I think that there is a parameter that you can pass to the get object by key that will tell you don't check the cache, go directly to the database. So that's what I like about SAF. It's customizable. If you want to like do one way or another one, so you have the default things. If you do by default, it will have these choices, but you can always.
Sorry. The thing is, with find object and get object by key methods, it's always this kind of performance, where's the functionality, where's ease of use and stuff like this. But there really comes unit testing into play, because if you have some kind of concurrency issues you have to tackle, or the kind of functionality, you need this business logic where you have absolutely make sure this is the only value in the database, then you really have to think about it.
Exactly.
And then you should at least test it. On the other hand, and you should unit test the stuff, but on the other hand, normally it doesn't matter, except for performance.
Okay, who wants to take the 16?
I take the 16. So roles are child and parent. So this is pretty much, there is a, if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember the name, el roles merge permission or something like that. That you have two choices, like grant in any role or grant in all roles. That's simple. What it means is like, if it's grant in any role, if only one of the roles that you have assigned, you have allowed, you will be able to see that object. In the other permission mode, that it says grant in all roles, every roles have to have allowed that permission for that object. If it's not the case, you won't have access. That's it. And the grant in any role is the one by default. So if you have it in one of those, you will be able to see it. I think that's it.
Well, I just want to add something here, is that if you want to keep it easy with the roles, don't merge roles or create parent-child roles, because then sometimes it can be like really complicated to know when one of your child roles is denying something that you think that it was allowed, and give access to it. So in the end, like I remember, like well, you know, Javier, we work in like big government agencies in El Salvador, and in the end, when you release the software, it's like, well, it's time to make the roles. And it's like, Jose, here we have these 200 roles that we want to create, and this is how they interact with each other. And it's like, yes, but you will have to do it. I don't have to do it myself. It's end user type of stuff that you need to do. So when you tell them like that, it's like, okay, then we only have 3. And they used to have like 200 type of roles with really granular permissions, but that can get really complicated, especially if you have child roles. So it's like, keep it simple, allow everything and just deny what you want, because it's easier. Actually, here in the webinar, I think he might be, oh, he's still here, Jacek. We were talking about that with him in the call one of these days, and it's like, he denied everything. So then it's hard to know what you need to allow. Yes, so it's easier to allow everything and just deny what, don't see the profit, don't see this, don't see that. But it's easier to allow everything and then to just deny what you want. But of course, if you have the time, the money and the resources and the constraints, go ahead and do child permissions and test them and see how they merge, how they deny. But for me, that's more about
Yeah, Jose, but
questions,
sometimes we have the situation that, let's say that is just one specific thing, like you want to give anyone the role to reopen a purchase order or something. So the manager, it doesn't have to be a manager. It's the manager who say, hey, I want Jose, I want Javier to be able to reopen the. So you do a role only to get access to something, and then it's nice to just, I will link that role to your user, and you're good to go. So then you have some few roles on your user, and you need to make sure that role denies everything except the only functionality that you want to give them. And that's where the permissions merging mode comes in, that grants in any role or grants in all roles.
Folks, I think we are another 35 minutes now into the run. Mm-hmm. So if I look at the next 17 to 24 questions, those are all best practices, and we are right now in security best practices. Best practices of data representation, and from my perspective, I should say we should give it a go and probably do a real one focused episode on only best practices for some kind of modules, because there's so much to talk about it.
Agree completely. I was about to say we already passed the 30 minutes that we would talk about.
I think we should save we'll do this like all the time. Whatever is left, just save it for the next meetup.
And not only that, we can expand on the security best practice that we're just talking right now. So leave it for the next one.
The thing is on testing on CI/CD, I can talk.
Yeah, we can go for
hours on this stuff.
Yeah, on source controller, and yeah, definitely.
So
there's one question that is answers 21. I can really quickly answer that. That is 21 model assembly DLL. Why is it generated? And the reason is, out of a model XAFer file, or the application model as it's called, that gets one for performance reason. There's generated source code and compiled and put onto disk from the XAF framework, and that's the whole application model stored as a DLL. And XAF normally holds this in memory, but for caching reasons, it puts it on disk.
Great. So I was going to say that, but you say it better than me, Manuel.
So Jacek, he just asked on the chat, we should increase the frequency of the meetup, and besides that, I'm really flattered about that. I think that once a month is good, because everyone here has a lot of work projects that have to attend, and we can do. But thank you, Jacek, for that recommendation, and we definitely, let's make the next one XAFer stand-up community best practice, and we go about all over this.
Maybe you can put the next questions in XAFers Weekly, and we can just take some of them.
I will do another survey on the same Facebook group, so everyone can ask anything they want, and we can come back to it. But I do enjoy these conversations a lot.
Of course.
So I won't lie. I could be talking here for a while, but I do believe that I think that 2 hours and 40 minutes, that's a lot for anyone to watch later on YouTube. So thanks, everybody. Thanks Manuel, for taking time of their vacation. Thanks, Dave, for taking time of their day. So thanks, everyone who show up. If anyone want to add anything, but thank you for being here.
Okay, bye guys, take care. Dave, was a pleasure to have you on this meeting.
Yes.
We hope to have you back
in the next one.
Time.
In the next one.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Okay, bye. Take care.
Bye.
All right. Let me see.